Everybody.
Good morning.
And welcome to the Trade, Commerce, and Tourism Committee. It's Wednesday, July 15th. I'm Councilwoman Janice Hahn. I'm chairing this wonderful committee, and I'm joined by Councilmember Bill Rosendahl. Do we have an ETA on Tom LaBonge? Not yet. Okay. So, you want to take 7 and 8?
I would love to take
On-
Ms. Sikowski first.
Yes.
But yes, 7 and 8. Yes.
7, 8 on consent?
Yeah.
Okay, is that fine?
Yep.
Okay. And then we will go to item 1. And by the way, if there's anyone here who wishes to speak on any items that are on our agenda, please fill out a speaker's card and give it to our clerk. Or you can speak on general public comment on anything that's not on our agenda. Okay.
Under item 1, the mayor submits for council confirmation his appointment of Ms. Cindy Misikowski to the Board of Harbor Commissioners for the term ending on June 30th, 2010. The City Ethics Commission staff have reviewed and reported on Ms. Misikowski's statement of economic interests.
Good morning, Ms. Misikowski.
Good morning.
Welcome back to City Hall.
Thank you.
You and I have had some interesting conversations since the mayor tapped you as the new candidate for the Harbor Commission. And what I thought maybe you could maybe address this committee is just a little bit maybe about what you see as kind of the future of our port, maybe speak to some of the challenges that we have, kind of balancing job creation versus people's quality of life in terms of air quality, and maybe what you see as we go on forward. We got a downturn in the economy, so people are very concerned about what's going on out there. But maybe kind of speak, kind of just not really as an outsider, since you were very involved in issues that related to the harbor when you were on the city council. But maybe now, taking a step back, what do you see as maybe our challenges out there, and what you think you could bring to the table as one of the commissioners?
Thank you, Councilmember. I appreciate the opportunity to be back in City Hall and back as part of the city family, if I'm lucky enough to be confirmed. But it is an interesting time to come back, and I think particularly having had some time away, to look at it from a bit with eyes that aren't completely immersed in it on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's really fascinating to see the progress that has been made, where I think particularly when you were first elected, and the focus on the port with some of the studies that had come through and some of the lawsuits that were very, very monumental, saying that although this is a critical economic engine for our city, there had been elements of effect that had not been previously addressed, and that certain communities had lived with for a very, very long time, that needed to be addressed. And I think part of those efforts, whether it was the phenomenal program of AMP, bringing electric power there and recognizing the issue with the ships and the diesel fumes and exhaust, the air pollution quality there was just terrible. And so to see some of the decisions that have been made 5-8 years ago, and then come back today and start seeing them in place and accepted and standard, and not only the standard in the port, but the standard across the country and perhaps even internationally, has got to be a very positive thing. Keeping it up with the idea that the whole premise of recognition of this and funds being put in to really alter the course down there was with the premise that it could grow. I think 5 years ago, 8 years ago, we were saying, how could it grow with the pollution, the trucks on the freeway? You just felt there was no more room. But with alternative energy, with alternative of the coming in at different times, which I know you started, all of that has given room to grow, but room to grow green. Now, so that was all set in place, and all of a sudden we hit the economy, which growth is going to be, it's going in the other direction. And so the question is, how much can we continue to keep the standards high and the policies high, and yet still market high and get people to come here? Recognizing the long-term commitment of this greening of the port is something that's going to be beneficial across the board. And I think businesses, not only at the port but across the country, are seeing that. All the stimulus package, the world economy, global warming, climate change, all of that is focusing on what are we going to do as a society different and yet still provide positive influence. So those are the challenges. I think you enumerated them. Making it happen on a day-to-day basis and realistically dealing with people who are very, very fearful of the economy, fearful of job loss. But how much, I don't know that means that we need necessarily to backslide in any of the other greening programs.
Right. A couple things I just want to touch on. One is the idea of diversity of jobs out there. I recently helped to negotiate a settlement with a company that actually wants to come back and build a shipyard at the Port of Los Angeles. And then we got the main channel dredging project on track. But the idea of bringing a shipyard back there again, that's a different kind of job. That doesn't directly relate to cargo volume. And that was just something I thought the time was right. So I just would like for you to kind of keep an eye on that. We've entered into exclusive negotiations with a company that we'll look at the idea of kind of redesigning how we dump some of that material that we're dredging, and then the possibility of a shipyard. So just really, I think it's a fragile agreement, and I would just love for you to look at that, because I think there's a lot of people in the harbor area that remember when we did have a shipyard there. We're the largest port that does not have a ship repair or building facility, and the closest one is San Diego. So might just in these tough times might be an interesting option to look at, again, a different kind of job out there, the old the iron building, the shipbuilding kind of jobs. So I want you to look at that. The other thing, and I know Bill has some questions, tourism has now surpassed goods movement as the number one industry, which the downside is, who would have ever thought that goods movement would have, taken a second to tourism? But in light of that, one of the things that I still feel is really needs to happen out there is the development of the waterfront, both in San Pedro and in Wilmington. We've always felt like our waterfront could be as wonderful as San Diego and San Francisco and Seattle and Baltimore. I mean, we have such a great, as you know, main channel. You were there when we dedicated the new fireboat. I mean, so we have this instant entertainment out there, and I've been a little disappointed in the progress of building that grand promenade that would go along the waterfront and kind of redo Ports of Call. So it hasn't seemed to be a priority in the past 4 years, but I just feel now more than ever we cannot forget that, again, we could be making money for the city of Los Angeles if we made that into a first-class tourist attraction. Again, with, I think, very little infrastructure, basically a giant sidewalk that would go along the waterfront. And we know people love to walk along the water. They love to eat along the water. They love to shop along the water. So is that something, we could count on your leadership for as soon as you get there?
In response to both questions, or both issues, one, I think that the port needs to recognize that there are a variety of things that happen down there. And you mentioned the possibility of reintroducing shipbuilding. I think that the opportunity is something to look at, and I think setting some parameters and goals so that it becomes realistic and not just something that is holding the port hostage over something that's not realistic makes sense. So let's find somebody who can really step up to the plate, get financing, make sense, and again, within all the other programs we talked about in terms of growing green and recognizing that's important. I noticed with interest, I think it was yesterday or the weekend, the article about the port building a new fast freezer capability for the fishing, because
Right.
commercial fishing has always also been just an incredible element, in fact, a much larger element down in the
Right.
port, and just given modernization and everything else, that has been waning, and we can't let that leave completely either. We've got to stay diversified, and clearly that diversification and opportunity of seeing all of these different things happening down there adds to the attractiveness from the tourism point of view, so that you go down and see all these interesting things happening. But we've also got to look at what and how you best market a ports of call kind of environment today. What's working well? Those in the
Right.
past that have been tourist beachfront kind of opportunities, turned into mostly T-shirt shops.
Right.
And so you've got to see what blends well with the local community, what offers opportunity to the local community, so that you just don't have typical kinds of things there that really aren't local community based. So I think all of those are things we have to look forward to.
And cruise ships. There was another article recently about the cruise ships, and again, what a boon they are to the local economy. I think every ship, I think the figure was like 700,000 into the local economy from the passengers on that ship. So that's another. We've lost a couple cruise ships at the port to our neighboring port, Long Beach. So I also think that is a huge boon to tourism. I mean, people, particularly I think this in the common economy, are still going on cruises. They find that to be a affordable vacation. So love to see more cruise ships. Of course, Disney, we signed a deal with Disney. They'll be coming in 2011, which is very exciting for Los Angeles. It was a huge coup to get the Disney ship over any neighboring port. So, but I would like us to focus on the cruise ships as well.
And that it only confirms the need to deal with the boardwalk, the opportunity there as people come down to visit
Exactly.
them, pick them up, et cetera, to have something there rather than just
Exactly.
a warehouse that they
It
go
was
through.
very disappointing when during the N1H1 flu scare that one of the cruise lines canceled their trip to Mexico, and they took the passengers off the cruise ship in San Pedro and bussed them over to Long Beach for the day. So, of course, that was very disappointing, but it serves us right, because we have, again, what I think is a treasure down there, and we just haven't spent the time. The port has not spent the time investing in the infrastructure that would attract tourism. So I just think it makes sense. It's not just a feel-good thing. It makes good sense. Tourism dollars go into our general fund, as you know, and that's what we want. So I'm looking forward. I'll be happy to recommend you to the full City Council for appointment, but really looking forward to your leadership on these issues that I think are really important.
Well, the one thing that I've already said, I think both to you and to people that I've talked to on the port, how important I think it is to have the port and the harbor in general create some identity here, and in City Hall, so that what you're very much aware of, that the rest of the city becomes aware of too. That this is not just a place that has to come up here on a controversial item or some kind of problem, but really is an asset that the city becomes aware of and integrates into city process, because it's phenomenal.
Good, and I think you're exactly the woman that can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Well, thank you.
And we're
Madam
joined by Councilmember Tom LaBonge. Hi, Tom.
Hey, what do you think?
We're all here. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We're lucky to have you coming back. Your experience at City Hall, both as a staffer and as an elected, puts you in a very unique spot that I know will be of great value to the city. First question is something I know that was near and dear to you when you were the 11th District Council member, and that is the use of wetland credits. You'll have a handle on that wetland credits issue. As you know, the C-shaped parcel at the lagoon in Playa del Rey is something I don't want to see other than part of the ecosystem of that lovely lagoon. There was an initial report way back in the 90s that you probably know better than I'll know that talked about wetland credits and talked about the potential of using those for projects within CD15 and CD11, because we have the coast and we have the wetlands. I'm excited about that potential opportunity, and one of the things I'd love for you to look at, as David Freeman was excited about it, now he's off the board and you're going on, was using those credits in Los Angeles City rather than shipping it down to Orange County, which is what they've done over the years to the Bayona, Chico, whatever that is there. So if you could help us with your leadership on that commission and seeing if they can dust off those old reports and somehow come to a credible belief that those wetland credits could be of help to Playa del Rey, I'd be most grateful for that.
I appreciate that. It is sort of amusing, if not unique, that going down to the port, that the symbiosis is with CD11 because it's part of the rest of the coastline of the city of Los Angeles. And I'm very familiar with the Del Rey Lagoon parcel and the possibilities there that could exist in terms of the credits for wetland restoration. So I think it's time to dust off those reports, look at the situation, see what is going on with the port's money, where it's being sent, and whether or not there have been projects developed that can come in and qualify not only for the port money, but meet the Tidelands Trust opportunities and requirements that's set in place. But I think it is a unique time.
And it's very exciting because you personally know that better than anyone. And if we can do that jump with those credits, you know that the community would be greatly appreciative of it. Thank you for that. Second, I have is this electric vehicle business. The mayor did one of his, I don't know if it was a State of the City or whatever address, in a factory where they're making electric vehicles in the harbor. Whatever energy you can develop there with everything as much as possible being electric, obviously moving things around on the port and so on, the less diesel toxicity, happier everybody throughout the whole region will be. So I know you care about those electric vehicles too, so I look forward to leadership on that one.
Thank you. The thread there is so interesting. The electric vehicle idea really was promulgated at DWP when David Freeman was there and Marvin Browdy was the city council member, and started to provide some grant funding for electric vehicles. They were then, I think, going to be electric carts or electric motorcycles or something of that. But the whole idea was not only to use them, but also
Leaf
have
blowers.
electric leaf blowers. I don't think so.
Look at the history.
But in any case, so to come full circle and have them now being produced, and obviously a huge benefit not only in the job market but in the pollution reducing positive aspect is also very exciting. And Dave Friedman, although he's not on the commission anymore, is back in the mayor's staff. So all of these lines stay moving forward.
And I'm excited about that. And I know that you know as well as anybody that the diesel has got to go, or it's got to be catalytic converters or somewhat done so that the air, 15% of the folks, the lungs capacity on the east side of the region is impaired by that toxicity. And my last point is LA Inc. is on the agenda here today to talk about a enterprise zone. One of the things I would love to see happen, and Ms. Hahn's talking about the cruise ships coming in and this and that, is the opportunity to have a shuttle from the harbor that would take people not only to downtown San Pedro and have a moment or two if they got an opportunity, but also to Venice Beach. And there's been tremendous desire to somehow hook Venice Beach to the harbor, to shuttles of some kind or another with ships. And if there's any way in which tourism, LA Inc. Obviously is going to be talking another subject, and your energy could kind of play out the harbor for Ms. Hahn's waterfront as well as a shuttle to Venice Beach. Any of that kind of LA Inc. business with the port be another great challenge that I think you obviously are up to.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've noticed at different beachfront communities that I've gone to that I haven't seen at the port, I don't know if it's there, if it maybe happens a little bit more in the summertime, are these like bicycle, tricycle taxis where you get on the back of a pedicabs.
We actually are looking at a proposal for that in
I
San
think
Pedro.
from the ship lines to the ports of call to downtown San Pedro, at least starting within that realm, you've got sunshine, you've got waterfront, you get the boardwalk, and it's just natural, and it's young folks making some money, but offering that easy passageway. You don't have to get onto a bus or something.
Actually, I'd love for you to look at that. We actually have a proposal out there, but our city attorney initially came back and said that for liability purposes, everybody in the pedicab would have to wear a helmet, which is a big downer.
I'm not.
You know,
I'm not that I understand that.
Yeah, you know, I don't know a girl alive who would want
Helmet
to,
hair, huh?
you know, have helmet hair just for going a block. So that was a big turnoff for me personally. So you may want to speak to our city attorneys down there and get them off that. 'Cause
Well,
that's
also, you know,
that's a killer.
You have so much capability just on the normal
I'm like,
roads.
who wore it
like-
before you did? And, you know, it was, so you
Thank
might
you
want
so
to,
much for stepping to the plate and coming back into government. We look forward to your leadership.
thank you. Mr.
Thank
Blunt,
you. I miss Ms. Sikowski. How you doing?
you missed
Very
Ms.
good.
Kowski.
Well, no, Ms. Sikowski read every report that ever was published in City Council, and I appreciate that. You'll be that diligent of a commissioner. I think it is connecting community, and not just the community that's in the harbor area, but the rest of Los Angeles and the importance of the port, and the rest of the county and the importance of the port. As echoed earlier, tourism is real important in every way, shape, or form for people to have a experience and know what it's all about and trying to meet objective goals. I just hope the port continues to express its value to the region in ways that the people of the cities that are in the county could understand. It's a valuable asset, and yes, we got to make steps to change and improve it. The one thing I would say, too, the only idea that I want to put on the table is I think if on weekends, and I don't know what the whole schedules are, but the Alameda Corridor, if there could be a fast, you know, if you want to try to connect tourism on like on a Saturday, to try to get a train out of Union Station to San Pedro right in there would be interesting to connect to the red car, which is such a wonderful historic addition to that. But I know those are side projects from the main mission, but connecting the region is so important. If I could be of any help to you, just let me know.
Thank you.
And my only advice is, as you got advice when you were in the 11th district, is listen to the councilwoman of the district.
That's good advice.
Okay.
That's good advice. If Janice is happy, everyone's happy.
I move that
Okay.
we move forward with
Okay,
this.
good. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And I will join in that. It makes a unanimous recommendation to the full city council that Cindy Misikowski become our new harbor commission as soon as possible. I think you're in council today. So congratulations. I think you're going to be a great asset for all of us. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, members.
Indeed.
Okay. Okay. Number 2.
Under item
Ready for 2?
Yep.
Okay.
T for 2.
Under item 2, as requested by this committee, the city attorney submits a report and draft amending ordinance to provide for an increase in the healthcare component of the city's living wage for private sector workers at City of Los Angeles-owned airports. Also, as requested, the CAO and CLA submit a joint report and recommendations on the amount of increase for the healthcare component of the city's living wage for private sector workers at city-owned airports, and recommendations on further amendments to the city attorney's amending ordinance. Also, LAWA's representative is here to report on some of the issues raised by the proposed amending ordinance concerning potential impacts on the department.
Thank you. Okay, just to get everybody up to speed on why we're here today. Really, since 2007, this committee has been examining the working conditions, the wages and benefits of airline contracted passenger service workers, particularly at LAX. These include personnel such as service workers, airplane cabin cleaners, baggage handlers, disabled passengers assistants. And we know that at LAX, these workers help to make the airport experience a safe and enjoyable one for traveling public. We know that many passengers depend on these workers, and sometimes you don't realize it until you need their services. They've almost been an invisible workforce out there at LAX, just doing their job, keeping planes clean and safe, attending to passengers. Again, until you realize how much you need them, sometimes you don't notice them. But we've been looking at their working conditions, and we've been looking at things like turnover and the stability of that workforce, because it's a very critical workforce, in my opinion, to the entire experience at LAX. Then in 2007, the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, they published a report called Under the Radar, How Airline Outsourcing of Passenger Services Compromises Security and Service Quality at LAX. And that also began to raise concerns for us about the training of these personnel in performing particularly security functions and training on how they dealt with disabled passengers. So we really began to look at the quality of their work, how they were being protected and trained and really respected and given the dignity that I believe that particular group of workers deserves. So we basically, in this committee, had asked the city attorney to report on how do we implement a program that reduces turnover, ensures training for these workers, really to improve service, to improve safety and security at LAX. And we also asked the city attorney to consider the options for setting higher wage and benefit standards. And we particularly took a look at health insurance because many of the workers came to this committee. Many of the workers came to the full city council and testified. Some of them were quite harrowing stories of mothers who had to leave work because they did not have health insurance and sometimes spent, 24, 48 hours in an emergency room trying to take care of a child that was either ill or one of them had been bitten by a dog. And I think most of us can't imagine having to do that. Most of us who have health insurance, we know that we can get into the doctor's office as soon as we want. And if we had a sick child or a child that had been bitten by a dog, we wouldn't think twice about calling our pediatrician and getting right in. But these workers were telling of stories that were very troubling to me. And in a city like Los Angeles, I wasn't feeling good about how we took care of these workers. And I've always believed that the working poor should be an oxymoron. People that work hard, which these workers do, in this city should not be poor and should not should not have health care be unattainable or unaffordable. Our living wage, by example, which was instituted in 1997, had an ability to raise the wage part of it, but did not have ability. I don't know what the thinking was 10 years ago, but the health care piece, the $1.25 of our living wage, has never been raised for 10 years. And the point of the living wage was always, if we can get the health care piece, which is now $1.25, if that was too much for an employer to pay, they would offer health insurance instead. So the idea was you pay $1.25 to these workers or you provide health care. Well, the $1.25 wasn't even enough to give the incentive to the employers to provide health care, and it certainly wasn't enough for people to buy health care on their own. So we've got ourselves in a situation where the employers are just saying, oh, we'll just pay the $1.25 because that's cheaper than providing health insurance, but that really wasn't enough to buy good health insurance. So we've got a report before us today that talks about, for the very first time in 10 years, actually increasing that health care piece to $4.25, which is about a $3 increase. And we think that is an amount. It increases at $3 from,
But 450 is what?
450 is what? Okay, so it increases at $3.25. Is that right?
Yeah.
Though it says four and a quarter, it should say 450 according to the numbers that were put out before.
All right. Well, we'll hear the report, but we're going to hear, I'm sure, today from the airline community that they feel like that's a lot to pay right now in these tough economic times. But I think we'll probably also hear from the workers who say it's about time that we looked at that piece. What I'm hoping is this will be a fair wage for both sides, fair for the workers, but maybe it will give some incentives to the employers to look at purchasing maybe a group insurance policy for these workers at the airport that actually will get us to our ultimate goal, which is providing good health care for everyone so that you can concentrate on work. You can concentrate on serving the passengers that come through LAX and not be obviously distracted by concerns for yourself or your family in terms of health care. So that's what we're here to hear today. So I don't know, Teresa, if you wanted
I'd like
to
to start
start,
with
but
City Attorney,
we
sure.
certainly want to hear from the CLA.
Good morning,
Okay.
council members.
Good morning.
Teresa Stamus with the City Attorney's Office. Pursuant to your committee's direction and the council's direction, we've drafted an amendment to the city's existing living wage ordinance found in the administrative code. And it does two things. First, it increases the health benefit in an amount that's recommended today by the CAO. We've left that blank, and the CAO, I believe, is recommending that number today. And this amount is for airport workers only. It provides for an automatic annual.
So let's get clear. What's the amount?
Tom?
4.25.
4 and a
So-
quarter. Okay.
So the total health benefit is $4.25. Okay.
Okay. And currently, right now, it's $1.25, so it's $3.
Right.
Right. $3 increase.
It
Okay.
also provides for an automatic annual adjustment of the health benefits similar to the existing living wage rate, which has annually been adjusted. And then it additionally provides for a periodic review of the health benefit to look at it sort of in whole and whether it appropriately provides health coverage to cover the objective of family.
How often will that review be?
Every 3 years
Every
is the
3 years.
recommendation.
Okay.
So just as a general overview, this amendment applies to all city airports and all employers at the airports who are currently subject to the living wage ordinance. And
And who are those? Can you give us a?
anyone from concessionaires to airline contracted employees, anyone who's subject to a personal service contract. et
Parking
cetera.
attendants?
Correct.
Okay.
And the ordinance was sent via Rule 38 out for comment as well. So we have received some comments back. I can just take you generally through it if you'd like. The legislative findings reflect those that the committee heard in the last, excuse me for just a minute. I think I have the wrong copy. Hold on.
Well, while you're looking for that, just to clarify, this only applies to employers who don't already provide health care. Is that correct? So if someone provides health care, do they continue to pay the lower rate?
What it does is it applies to anybody who's currently subject to the living wage at the airport, and they will now pay the higher amount of $4.25.
But if they're already paying, if they already are providing health care,
Healthcare, then there's
they
no
don't-
change to
right,
them. That's
right,
correct.
Okay.
So the first section literally is just the wages. It shows that there's an adjustment from the current amount to the $11. It should be $11.55 for regular employees, but then it will be now, what would be the number? The total would be $14.55.
$14.55, the total living wage.
Right. The health benefit then in section 10.37.3 would now read a payment of at least $4.25 by airport employers, and then it would remain $1.25 for all others. And then that amount is also subject to adjustments by lacers that currently applies to the underlying living wage rate. And then the periodic review is at 10.37.3.B, and that is where we have the 3-year adjustment, where this CAO would review every 3 years the health benefit contribution. Currently, that periodic review applies across the board, but we could clarify that it's that they're reviewing the health benefit contribution by airport employers if that's the committee's preference.
Okay.
And also, I should mention previously under 10.37.3 under health benefits, the adjustment applies across the board to the health benefit for all the city family. If we're narrowing that to the airport employers, I would include that that language as well.
Say that again.
Right now, as you know,
Oh, right, the living, okay,
the
got it.
$1.25
But
is,
this one is just going to be for,
we can, if that's the committee's intent to only annually adjust the health benefit at the airport, then we can add that or clarify that it only applies to the airport
otherwise it would apply to,
across the board throughout the city.
okay.
No.
Do you need me to go over that
You've only been
again?
talking about the healthcare component for the airport
Right,
workers.
yeah, this was
Okay.
specifically about
Okay,
airport
so I will make that
workers.
clarification.
Okay,
And then lastly, the amendment is pursuant to 10.37.3C. The amendment is going into effect on a going forward basis to new contracts, because this has been the past practice of amendments to the living wage ordinance. But however, we can, I've heard the CAO is recommending that it become effective 90 days following the effective date. So we would have to make that adjustment in this
Okay.
living wage ordinance.
okay, okay,
I should say become operative 90 days after the effective date.
okay. Now, do you know things like, do these contractors have the ability to pass along these extra costs? And is there a possibility for the airlines to renegotiate their contracts with the airport since they'll be taking on these additional
We
costs?
have looked into that. The airport, and there may be staff here that can address this more specifically. They, for instance, regulate or impose a living wage pursuant to their non-exclusive license agreements. They don't always have copies of the license agreements, but for instance, we looked at the standard contract that Swissport has, which is a major subcontractor at the airport. And there, what we do see is that typically there's a 60-day mutual termination clause that allows each party to terminate virtually at will. And then secondly, there's also, we've seen provisions that allow the contract to be renegotiated if there's a change in laws or costs or unforeseen costs that merit a renegotiation of the contract.
So this would this be up to LAWA? Or
What would be up to law?
if they're
The-
to renegotiate their contracts with these?
Okay, I
the
should
airline.
back up.
Okay.
A lot of the application of this ordinance is going to be between the airlines and their subcontractors.
True.
So Lawwood would not be involved.
Okay.
The standard provisions for LAWA just depends case by case.
Okay.
The standard provisions typically provide that the contractor has to comply with the living wage ordinance. In addition to complying with the living wage ordinance, there's also a standard provision that says this means you also have to apply with any amendments to the living wage as well.
Okay.
But typically personal service contracts do provide for a termination, but it depends on the contract. Sometimes it's not as easy if it's a concession contract, or if it depends on what the nature is of the service that's being provided.
Okay. Okay, anything else from the city attorney?
That's it for now.
Okay. Do we want to hear from CLA?
Certainly, very briefly, I think Ms. Stamos covered most of it. First of all, I do want to apologize for the lateness of the report.
Yeah, it was really upsetting.
It should not have occurred. In any case, before you is the recommendation to increase it $3 an hour. I think you touched on some of the issues that were a cause of the delay, which were proposals to phase this in over a longer period of time, such as 3 years.
Right.
There is no doubt that there will be some increased costs, but the difficulty in that is not knowing how this fits into the overall cost structures and competitiveness and forward projections. And clearly airlines are having a difficult time now. Clearly we have a horrible recession, and what you're doing, I think, is for the long term. not just simply for today. So in essence, I didn't feel that we had data that I could independently suggest to you that this needs to be phased in. So we are recommending that it be implemented now. And as Ms. Stamos indicated, it does include the CPI increase similar to the base rate as well.
Right. So you seriously weighed the possibility of phasing this in
Absolutely.
and found that it just,
What we found is that clearly there's additional costs.
Right.
But what we couldn't determine is whether those costs could be passed through, whether they
Right.
could be absorbed.
Right.
I do understand airlines are losing money. What is the actual increase per ticket? And can that be passed through?
Right.
We also know that airlines instituted baggage fees within the last year and have increased ticket prices. So it was difficult to discern
Right.
what the real impact on profitability and competitiveness would be from this increase. And absent
Right.
that data,
Right.
we didn't feel
Right.
I didn't feel we had the data to recommend phasing it.
right. Okay.
There's one other thing that I wanted to mention. I did see in a draft copy of the CA report that the amendment would be subject to approval by the Board of Airport Commissioners, and that's not the case. The charter, as you know, was amended in 1999 and effective in 2000, and in that an amendment was included that allows the council to set living wage policies citywide. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Tom, did you have anything to say?
I think we've covered all of the issues here.
Okay. Do you have any questions just of the,
If this report says phase it in, you're saying don't phase it in. Who's saying what in this report?
No.
That we got 10 minutes ago.
Well,
No, they're
what
recommending-
the report says is that,
no,
No.
No.
phase.
We are
It
not
says
phasing.
phase in.
no, what the report says
No,
is
no.
that
No, it
when
doesn't
we
say
make
that,
this
does it?
change to the living wage ordinance, we are changing the rate structure by 40% for this compensation for these workers. Arguably, that has an impact on the cost structure of these organizations. And at this point in time, I think the data is pretty clear that travel is down, the industry is suffering, et cetera, et cetera. So the question here is a balance question.
Right.
You're balancing the immediate need to provide health care, which was your previous instruction to provide full family health care. We have come back with a recommendation for 425, which we believe will provide full family health care. The question is balancing that in the environment in which this change would take place. Mr. Miller is correct. We do not have a verifiable way to say that this change would create a substantive difference.
Right.
in the
Can you speak a
underlying-
little bit louder into your microphone? They're having a hard time hearing you. You usually got to put like you got
Okay, so
to.
you're basically saying, don't phase it in, do it now, and it makes sense to do it now.
Yes.
We have no basis upon which to say, don't do it now.
Okay, then the other question was, some groups have said it should be 450, you're saying 4.25. How do we get the difference? And is it true 25 cents a ticket is what it would cost? Did we analyze it from that end?
We did not analyze it from that end. As I said, the underlying cost structure of how these contracts work between the service providers and the airlines and the relationships between those two, I had some preliminary discussion with the airlines. Some of them are passed through, some of them are not. So it will impact service providers differently depending upon their relationship with the carriers. So what that impact would be on a contractor that does not have the ability to pass through, clearly this is a significant change in their pricing and their compensation structure. For those that have the ability to pass through, it's not necessarily an impact to them, it's an impact to the airline industry itself. So
Very cool.
the impacts will be different contract by contract.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. LaBonge.
So you say implement it now within the 90-day period?
Yes.
If approved by council? You're just saying it's legal to do either way whether it's at the airport or we have an option to go citywide?
Right. We have been researching that to identify any legal issues with making it effective on a date certain. And so far, it appears to be legal, and we'll
Right.
there's not a legal issue with them.
And let me ask the CAO again, just to clarify there, Tom. You say it could go now or could go in phases?
No.
This is the
I'm
balance
asking.
question
Okay.
that is before you. Our recommendation is to go now by.
To go now,
virtue
so,
of the
okay, all
fact-
right.
By virtue of the fact that we cannot say with 100% certainty that this would create a significant change in
Okay.
the underlying.
Let me ask a question here. Do we know how many medical clinics there are within the region in the South Bay, from Santa Monica down through Torrance? Just, from a business standpoint, I know things have changed over the years, but is there any way to know what's out there?
Offhand, I don't know. We'd probably have to check with the county to see. I'm sure that they have both the public and private.
I think we'd know, because there's been a transformation. There used to be very good medical clinics. I know even Kaiser used to have one down at 8th and San Francisco right here for downtown workers. They had a place. Now these places are no longer there. I'm thinking if we're moving in this direction, which I support this move, that we find that there be facilities within the region so that people aren't having to go wherever they have to go to. I think we should know where the services are if we're going that direction. Thank you, Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. I think too, I think the problem was, and again, I wasn't around 10 years ago. Maybe Cindy was.
You were around, but not here.
What the thinking was by indexing, the wage portion of our living wage, but not indexing the health care portion. I have a feeling that was probably some compromise that's all they could get. But I think that's been our problem. If this could have been indexed, along with the wage portion, I don't think we would be in the situation. Now, again, it seems like it's a big hit, when all along it would have been nice to have seen it. So this one will index. Is it based on this periodic review, or is
CPI.
it's based on the CPI?
The same basis as the base rate.
Okay, so so that I don't think we'll be in this problem again. Now, is the periodic review is 3 years or 5 years?
3 years.
Okay,
And the periodic review-
CAO recommends periodic review every 5 years. I had in my notes, no? Okay, so
Ended up at 3.
It's
The
3.
periodic review is necessary because the CPI adjustment that we are using is capped at 3%.
that's what you wrote, Jenny. Just go ahead.
The periodic review is a mandatory element here because the CPI adjustment we're using is the one that we use for retirees, and it is capped at 3%. And so over time, healthcare historically, may change in the future, but historically exceeds the CPI rate. And so the ability to catch up has to take place, and a 3-year window is sufficiently short that we would not fall significantly behind during that period.
And the periodic review will look at,
It'll look at the underlying changes in the price of healthcare.
Okay.
And if we're adjusting at 3%,
right,
and the price of healthcare is going up at 10,
Right.
then over 3 years you will fall behind.
Okay,
And
so that's
it will
what you'll be looking
necessary
at.
to look at the underlying price of healthcare and
Right.
determine whether an adjustment is appropriate at that point. in
Right.
time.
As part of that review, would it be appropriate also to look at some of the concerns that the business community has raised about how this impacts their operations? Would that be could that be a part of this periodic review?
Certainly.
I think that
Would
would
be
be.
appropriate.
I think that's appropriate. I think if we're also looking at one side, then I think we need to look at the other side and find out how this, because, I mean, even the living wage. When the living wage was instituted 10 years, it was, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. No one will ever do business with LA again. You're doing the worst thing possible. This is it. This is jobs as we know it today. And we found out many of those fears never came true. So I think it's always good to look at the impacts of what we do so that we don't just make these policy changes in a vacuum. So I would like to see that as part of the review.
I might also add that depending upon what comes out of Washington, their goal is this month, we may be in an entirely different environment
In terms of health care.
sooner than 3 years in
That's
terms of
true.
healthcare.
That's true.
Would you like a would you like that expanded scope in the
I would.
ordinance? So,
I would.
okay.
I think that I think that's right
Okay.
for the business community, that they know that we're looking at all the impacts of this decision that we're making. I think that would be right. And you're going to put in the 90 days also.
Right. So it'll read that the amendment shall become operative 90 days from the effective date. And the effective date is 31 days after publication.
Okay. Any other questions of our city staff? Then I'll have some speakers. Any other questions of these guys? Sure.
1 minute.
Yeah. Okay. Mary Lopez, Jerry Kaminsky, Carolina Briones. Carolina.
Give him a minute or two.
Catalina, do you, yeah,
Yeah, y'all come up, sit down.
make yourselves at home. In the interest of time, we thought we'd give a minute apiece, so
You need a little more.
if you need a little more, go ahead.
All right, very good. Thank you. My name is Jerry Kaminsky. I'm a professor of health services at the UCLA School of Public Health. I'm a health economist, and I've studied issues related to health insurance and making health care affordable for Americans for about 25 years. I'm here today to speak in favor of the proposed amendment to the living wage ordinance. Obviously, one of the original goals was to achieve affordable health care for workers in the city, but it's not possible today because the health care differential does not reflect the current cost of health care, and I think this committee's acknowledged that. To determine the appropriate amount, the Mercer report does provide useful guidance. Our estimate is that for the LA metropolitan area right now for large employers, the average cost of health care for family coverage is about $8,500 a year. So the proposed increase of $425 will almost completely cover that cost, but not quite. Our estimate is that it would take an increase to $450 to cover the complete cost. But obviously the $425 is a major step in the right direction. I urge the committee to implement the increase today to protect the health of 5,000 airport workers and their family members. And I'd just like to add that I know that there's a great deal of concern because the economy is doing so poorly, and this is a large additional cost on the industry. But I'd like the committee to remember that because this increase or because this allowance is not increased for a decade, that every year that the increase is not in effect, that the workers pay a price for not having health insurance, and that is a tax directly on the workers who are providing valuable services to the city.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Carolina Briones with the LA Alliance for a New Economy. It's a very exciting day today. We strongly support this proposal. Just want to clarify one thing on the numbers. There's been a couple numbers thrown around, and actually we think the best number comes from the city's own research, right, which was in that Mercer consultant report, which Professor Kaminsky mentioned that the city itself commissioned, that does give the number for LA Metro employers, and that's, and taking into account the average number of hours that living wage workers work, that does come out to a $3.25 increase, so for a total of $4.50. So just to clarify the numbers and where they come from, it's not our estimates, it's the city's own study that was commissioned.
So why did we
So-
get
Good question.
Just want to clarify
Okay.
that. And then a couple other points just in reference. I think you're going to really hear a theme of urgency today, and the fact that, it's difficult times, and it's particularly difficult times for people without health care, and we know that that has economic consequences in people's lives. And so, anything to delay this proposal, of course, we're against, because it's such an urgent thing. And it's not just that it's been 10 years since the original living wage was passed with this problem kind of in it. We've been at this process now with this amendment since last fall. So we're really excited about it moving forward today. And a couple quick points I wanted to mention that came up. You asked about which employers would be affected at the airport. There are many employers, thousands of covered employees already at this standard, and so those employers, while they would be covered by this amendment, would not have they're already above this, they're already at this standard, so there would not be a financial impact on them. And then the question about the ability to pass along costs, I just want to remind everyone that the airlines are covered by the living wage now, and so under that, they have an affirmative responsibility to actually ensure that their subcontractors are complying with the living wage. So not only is there an ability, there's actually an affirmative responsibility to ensure that. So, we're confident that that will happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary Lopez, were you here? Because I called you up earlier. No? Robin Wilson, Claudia DeLeon, and Rebecca Pisitola.
Hello, good morning, members of City Council. My name is Clare DeLeon. And can please every coworker stand up, please? Thank you. We are here today so excited to give you guys thank you so much for every support that you guys giving us, for every help that we are feeling, for supporters in our struggle, for doing the right thing. We are so happy here because we're hearing hope. We're hearing everything is going in a good way. We're really happy. I'm the mom who bites I'm the one. And I'm feeling so happy because you guys are helping us. You guys are giving us help. Thank you so much. And one thing that I wanted to say, on July 1st, I received a letter from the medical services that now every adult has the medical council. As an adult, we're not going to have no more medical services. So thank you so much, and we have to do it. We have to do it now. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for all the support that you guys are giving us.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome, doing the right way. Thank you.
Wow, how do you follow that?
I know, really.
Well, thank you guys so
What's
much.
your name?
I'm Robin Wilson.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the right steps and standing up for a good cause. I mean, I know it's hard. I know you guys get a lot of opposing phone calls, probably hate mail and all that stuff from the people who are opposing this bill. But the people that are opposing this bill, they have comprehensive health care. They have employers who are paying for their stuff, so they don't feel what we feel. They don't have to worry about sitting in, a county facility for 15 hours just to have somebody take your temperature and tell you to go sit back outside. They don't have to worry about that. They go in the doctor, they're home in an hour or so.
Exactly.
So thank you for standing up for us. Thank you for doing the right thing. Bill, I always see you on the news for standing up for the little guy, and I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
For continuing to do that. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being our champions.
Thank you. You're our champions out there at the airport every day.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Pisitola. I'm the Director of Statewide Programs for Insure the Uninsured Project, and we work with a variety of stakeholders to increase healthcare coverage for California's uninsured, and we've been working with the Reaching Higher for Healthcare Coalition to try to get LAX workers, like you've seen here, insured. And just this past weekend, they had a clinic at the streets in front of the Tom Bradley Terminal at LAX. And the purpose was to provide airport workers with some basic healthcare services provided through mobile clinics. For many of those workers, this was the only form of health care they've received in a long time. And the clinic provided care, but it was also designed to draw attention to the healthcare crisis at LAX, for which there is a solution, the decision that's before you now. Workers are sick right now. They are dying right now. You've heard the stories. They need health care now. A Families USA study estimated that 8 Californians die each day simply because they don't have coverage. So the time for healthcare really is now, because there may not actually be a later for some of these people. And just to clarify what happened just quickly at the clinic, some of the staff there realized that some of these workers have diseases that have been undiagnosed for years. They didn't know they even had them. They had things like high blood pressure and diabetes. We really need you to look at updating the living wage now so these people can get the treatment they need and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. We have Daisy Ho, Jim Stevens, and Nino Orquiola. Go ahead.
Good morning, Councilman Hahn and other council members on the Trade and Commerce Tourism Committee. I'm Jim Stevens, representing the Air Transport Association, whose members provide over 90% of this nation's domestic passenger and cargo air service. I'm joined here this morning with Dan Hagan from American Airlines. We are here to underscore our opposition at this time to raising the health care component of the living wage ordinance at LAWA airports. ATA has already submitted a letter, and as have our other members, and I'm not going to repeat the letter. What I do want to come to you today to say is we hear what the previous speakers have said, but wish to highlight that certainly everyone would appreciate an increase in their pay and benefits at this time. The recession is hurting millions of people and disrupting their careers. This is very evident in the airline industry. The current economic health of the industry is extremely fragile due to the stream of shocks that we've endured over this decade, and we can ill afford new increased taxes, fees, and regulatory burdens at this time. The industry lost $9.5 billion alone in 2008, over $36 billion for the period 2001 to 2008, and this is not a good picture. And indeed, 2009 is not looking any better. Unemployment in the industry reached 28%, or 150,000 full-time employees since 2001. Locally, as you're very well aware, LAX passenger traffic was down 4.2% in 2007 and down again in 2008. LAX flights are down 14.1 in the last year. Not a good picture. Any increase in the cost of doing business, and we're talking, I've heard estimates anywhere from $8 to $12 million that this proposal would add to the cost of doing business at LAWA airports, certainly to the airlines, threatens the further reductions of the over 10,000 jobs that we currently have at the LAWA airports and flight service at the airports. Some say, I've heard, that there's no impact on the jobs. That's not true. You just read the paper. I mean, the airlines are already starting to shed jobs once again because of the high costs that they're experiencing and the drawdown in the number of passengers. This is why one of our key objectives at ATA nationwide is to do no harm. The changes before you today will harm the recovery efforts of the industry. I understand that some have said that these costs can just be passed on to the ticket buyer. Not true. The market, as competitive as it is, will not allow the transfer of costs like this to the traveling public. As an example, last year and again this year, we are seeing how the airlines are unable to raise ticket prices to compensate for the fluctuations in the cost of jet fuel. We are not gas stations. We do not raise the cost every time the cost of oil goes up. While we oppose the proposal before you today, we fully recognize that the health care that you're considering is an important issue for the City Council, that you want to address that. And we urge you to work with the business community, including the airlines, to fashion a proposal that improves health care for the local workers, but will not harm the industry, which is fighting for its survival.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Councilwoman Han, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reverend Daisy Ho, a United Methodist minister. I do travel internationally and domestically. I thank the LAX workers for their faithful services. I live around LAX now, and I'm their neighbor, and they are my neighbors and friends. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of their needs and struggles. We're on the verge of being able to create access to health care for 5,000 employees of LAX contractors and their family members. Others have spoken to the financial and medical reasons for doing so. I wish to address the moral reason that health care for our airport workers should take effect as soon as possible. People are suffering. People like Luz Maria Forrest, who despite working full-time, did not have access to health care coverage that would pay for her breast cancer treatments. She had to battle breast cancer and the public system at the same time. Fortunately, she survived under a mountain of debts. People like Anna Rodriguez, who suffered a miscarriage after discovering she had tumors on her ovaries. Anna had the basic health care offered by her employer at the airport, but that insurance paid little of her medical bills. She almost lost her job after her miscarriage because of the amount of days she missed on medical leave, and even now has $11,000 in unpaid hospital bills.
Thank you.
A lot of other people, they also suffer for the same issue. So I'm asking you to raise their living wage now.
Thank you.
I'm really thankful for the procedure of this, and we are heading there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daisy.
Good morning, council
Good
members.
morning.
My name is Nino Orchiola, and I work for AirServe Corporation, and we're one of the service providers at the airport. Currently today, we have about 250 employees at AirServe, and earlier you had talked about retention. I think we're a good company. We're a caring company. Out of those 250 employees, about 25% of those employees have been with this company for over 10 years. We actually have one employee that's going to be celebrating 21 years with us in October. So that tells a good story of what we have. We're fortunate to have quality employees, good training, and leading edge technology that separates us, I think, from our competition. However, I do want to say, just in general comments, that with the weakening economy that we have in regards to the airlines and the airlines cutting capacity, actually ceding back terminal space to the airport, that's led to us having to cut jobs. It has. That's the unfortunate truth. Even without this proposal, that's what it's done. With this proposal, I think it would give our clients an extra $1.7 million in additional costs. What I'm trying to say is I'm glad to hear that the council members are looking at a very balanced approach to this issue, as well as a comprehensive review on the financial impact on both sides. So with that being said, I want to thank you for this consideration, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker will be John Simmons. John Simmons, going once.
He
going
may be in
twice.
the room next door. He may be in the room next door. If is this Mr. Simmons coming in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Oh.
Right here.
Okay. Come on down.
Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the time. My name is John Simmons. I'm the general manager for Aircraft Service International Group at the LAX Airport. We have over 70 different customers. I have about 630 employees from all lines of businesses. We do a number of things at the airport at LAX, and I'd just like to respectfully speak on my opposition of the proposed increase on the healthcare component for living wage. At this time, I do think that everyone should have affordable and good healthcare. However, in the economical downturn that we're currently in, as the gentleman previously indicated, with the air travel being down and the ticket yields not being where it is, it would be a very, very tough adverse impact to our community at LAX. I think if service and security is a driving force behind some of this stuff, I think that we'd end up going backwards just a little bit, because I think a lot of businesses would have to cut labor back a little and ultimately try to stay above water as far as profitability goes. So the long and short of it, with all due respect, is that I do oppose, and I just oppose the timing. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming down and speaking to us.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation that's
What
before
about
us?
the 4 1/4 and the 4.50?
Okay, do we
What's
want,
the deal?
okay, you have a question with that. There was a discrepancy in the 425 versus the 450. Carolina said it was our own research that came up with the 450 number, so we're wondering why the recommendation is 425.
If we could ask you to give us the opportunity to clarify that before council. The intent was to use the data from the Mercer study, conferring with the CAO, and we thought the number was 4 1/4, but if we could take another look at that, and we'll clarify before council.
Okay. Where does that leave us in terms of an action? Do we recommend this with a clarification at council?
You can, yes. I'm told that you can take an action on the report, even though we brought it in late.
Okay.
What we would suggest is to ask the city attorney to have both versions so that they'll be before you when you hear the ordinance.
Okay, and when does it come to council?
We can coordinate with your office and the CLA, CO. and
Okay.
Attorney.
So is there a motion to?
I just had a question. I with the president looking this strongly and asking Congress to move on this, would it make any sense? I know we want it today, but to have it be implemented on the 1st of January, given the window that what the federal government may work on? Because if this goes in September, let's just say it goes in September, because I don't know if it's going to get here before summer recess for the council, and then it's approved in September, then there's 30 days. It's an additional 60 days. There is a concern because the world has changed dramatically in the business sense of things. So the only thing I would be asking to see if it would make sense to have this implemented January 1st, 2010, as opposed to October 17th or whatever it would be. It would give business a chance to plan for that. It's a thought. We could discuss it in council if you don't want to.
Let me say
discuss
this,
it
if
now.
I could. Driving here today, NPR had acting chair Chris Dodd, where one Senate committee is finally coming to grips with health care. I don't know if the federal government's going to get their act together or not. I would hope they would. If we approve this today and the federal government takes positive action, would it impact us in any way, or how would that be?
Well, again, I think with the timeline, if the council were to adopt the ordinance, say, by August 1st,
right,
and then it becomes effective then roughly September 1st.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a December 1st effective date.
Right.
Essentially 45 days ahead of Mr. LaBonge, what you're proposing.
Right.
If something happens between now and then,
Yep.
the council could always adopt an ordinance repealing this change or making whatever change would be appropriate given whatever might come out of any federal health care bill.
Very good. I appreciate that. I move that we go forward with the recommendations of either 4 1/4 or 450 and move it as quickly through the process as possible. And if the federal government comes to the light and we don't have to implement it, great. But I think it just puts more pressure on Washington to get their act together and deal with health care as a national issue. I don't want to wait another day.
Right. And I hear the business community and loud and clear, and but it does seem to me in my short years on this earth that it never seems to be a good time for business to raise the wages of their employees in good times or bad times. And we've had a lot of good times, frankly, in the last years since the living wage was instituted, and I never really once heard the business community come forward and say, hey, we're having a really good year. Oh, how about if we raise the health care portion of your living wage voluntarily? So it's never... It never seems to be a good time, but I think it is the right time to give this incentive to the employers out at the airport to provide health care for their employees and their families, or pay this increased $3 an hour so that they can purchase their own health care. And hopefully what comes out of this is, again, whether we have a new health care policy in this country, or maybe, again, some creative number crunching by these contractors out at the airport to look for pooling their resources and contracting with an insurance company that would consider providing health care for these employees at a rate that makes sense for the employers and the employees. That's what I hope comes out of this. So I will second this, and
I vote aye.
we'll move this forward to the full city council approving this new ordinance. Thank you very much.
That was unanimous, right?
Yeah. Okay, here's where we're at. LA Inc. wants not the tattoo show on TV, but they would like to have 5 minutes to talk about their LA Tourism Marketing District, which actually will bring revenue into the city at a time when we are looking to find new ways to bring revenue into our city. It's 10 o'clock. Council's happening.
Should I go down and cover for you too?
They said they want 5 minutes.
This is going to come to the
Okay,
full
we'll
council.
talk
There's no
about
action on
that,
this.
yes.
So there's no action on this?
There's no action. 5 minutes.
So-
5 minutes.
So if you miss it,
And can somebody tell our council president that we're on our way?
I'm Mark Lieberman, the president of...
Whatever you want to do, Tom.
You got it.
I'm Mark Lieberman, the president of LA Inc., the Los Angeles and Convention and Visitors Bureau. And what we're trying to do and we're working on and we have been working on for the last 6 months is to establish a tourism marketing district. This is to supplement the money that we receive today, both from the city, from our 1,000 members, and of course from the airport. It's to a certain extent similar to a bid, but the difference is that this would be an assessment on the hotel guests. This is really not just being sponsored by us, but is being sponsored by the hotels, the hotel management of the city. As you're aware, there are approximately 464 hotels in the city of Los Angeles. They are the ones that have to approve this. The assessment percentage has not been determined. The number of hotels has not been determined. This is all about adding money to our existing budget. Presently, our existing budget is at approximately $18 million. As you know, we get 1 point of the TOT, which has, of course, dropped about almost $2 million in the last year and a half. And, of course, we get money from the airport, which is earmarked for only for international. And, as you know, that has gone from $6.8 million to $5.2 million. And the additional monies that we receive are from our 1,000 members that we have in the hospitality industry. This is being done to drive additional traffic through the airport, through people coming here. We've gone, as you're probably aware, we've gone from almost 26 million visitors a year down to about 24.5 million visitors. This would provide us the opportunity also to be competitive with other cities, not just in the state of California, but throughout the country that are in the process and have also established tourism marketing districts. San Francisco has established one. San Diego has established.
So what kind of revenue do you think?
We're thinking about somewhere in the neighborhood of, as I mentioned to you, our budget today is about $18 million. We're looking at somewhere probably between additional $10 to $12 million, which will really put us in the ball game to be able to advertise and promote. What we're asking for you to do today is for you to ask the other city departments, the city clerk, the CAO, the CLA, to work with us to move this forward as we work with both, obviously, the hotels who have the leadership role here to move this forward.
I greatly support this, Ms. Hahn, and
Yeah.
I leave my vote affirmative on this table. I'm going to go down and cover for us in council.
Okay.
It's a great concept.
All right. And so just briefly, what are the boundaries of this? It's kind of like a CRA district,
Yeah,
right?
well,
Only it's,
I should mention, as I mentioned to you, there are 464 hotels. The hotels that we have about 20 hotels that are on a steering committee now, and those hotels are representative hotels from
But I mean, what's the boundaries are downtown? Or?
No, the boundaries
Okay.
are the entire city, but the hotels have to determine which hotels would participate. We have 464 hotels, but 124 of the hotels have 75 rooms or more. So we have a large number of hotels that are very, very small. And the hotels are now determining whether or not they would participate in the assessment or not.
All right. So there's so what the recommendation is that we create a working group consisted of the representatives of the mayor, the CAO, CLA, city attorney, city clerk, convention center department, LA Inc., and other city departments or agencies as appropriate to develop and create a tourism marketing district in the city. That's what you want to have happen. I think that's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Time has come.
Time has come.
And as you know, we hope you're ready to participate in the motion that I asked for last week, which was an accounting of the revenue that was generated last week during the memorial service.
Your office, we gave them a preliminary report, and they will have a detailed report today.
Right.
One of the things I'd like you to look at real quickly, you said 24 million people come here. There are people that transfer from one flight to another. Some of them have 5 hours or 7 hours,
Yeah.
something like that. What I'd like you to focus on is the opportunity for some of these folks, instead of wandering around that airport, that we have a shuttle system that could take them to Venice Beach or down to the harbor or somewhere where they can get 4 or 5 hours out of the damn airport in the context of seeing L.A., which I know when I travel the planet, I'd like to get away for a little bit if my plane's connecting flights or such. It would be nice if we had some signage at the airport that said, if you have a few extra hours, why don't, there's a shuttle that'll take you to the harbor and you can walk, you can go to Venice Beach. Something like that so that we can get them out of the terminal if they feel like doing that. And also some of them that quickly go through hotels and come and go.
Right.
Obviously with the hotels, getting them out of their rooms, getting them to enjoy our great city.
Right. Of course, when we have this brand new modernized airport with fabulous shopping,
Nobody wants
and
to leave it at
no
all.
one's going to want to leave, but that's a ways to come. But I know, one of the things we also talked about was advertising in the airport for city treasures like our new fountain down in San Pedro, and we need,
is beautiful.
It's fabulous. So we need new signs that will market places for people to go if they do get out of the airport. Okay, great idea. We will approve that. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Yep.
Okay, now do we 4, 5, and 6?
Dr. Knapp is
Yes. Under item 4, I think the Harbor Department wishes to modify its recommendation.
Okay.
Good morning, Chris Bobo with the City Attorney's Office on item 4. It's
Quickly.
amendment to 2 legal services contract. At this time, we would like to withdraw the request with respect to the Mayor Brown contract, which sought an additional $500,000. Given the posture of the case, we do not believe we need that money at this time. We would ask you to go forward and approve the amendment to the Howry contract.
And I can't ask any questions about this case in open session, is that
I
correct?
can tell you that the district court granted the city defendant's motion for summary judgment, and the relator plaintiff has appealed the matter to the Ninth Circuit. So we are on appeal. We believe our case is very strong, and we
Okay.
hope to prevail in the
All right,
Ninth Circuit.
so you're asking for us to, you're just making an amendment to withdraw the agreement
with respect to Mayor
Okay.
Brown going
All right.
forward only on the Howry contract.
Okay.
And they are continuing to assist us in the defense and the.
So moved.
Okay, so moved.
And second,
Okay.
passed. That's
Okay.
it.
Is it passed?
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll approve, is it in council today? No. Oh, okay. Since the time, we thought we would approve 5 and 6, and then when it comes to council, I feel bad, though, that Dr. Nats came all the way down here.
I came for seeing too, so that's fine.
Okay. Do you
So
want to?
moved.
Okay, so moved. And then we took 7 and 8 on consent, because we got to get to council. Sorry, Geraldine. Courtney, or did?
You need to adjourn.